Bienvenidos al podcast de Entrepreneur de Keep It Up Show, un espacio creado por dos emprendedores en el que traemos a gente chingona e increíble que están cambiando la forma de ver y hacer las cosas. Cada martes, jueves y sábado podrás escuchar un nuevo episodio donde encontrarás información que te ayude a impulsar tus ideas, empresa y sobre todo, tus sueños. Antes de comenzar, si nos estás escuchando en YouTube, apóyanos con un like, dándole clic a la campanita y suscribiéndote al canal. Y en Spotify, dándonos seguir. Hoy tenemos de invitada a Taj Dashaun, coach motivacional especializado en ayudar a atletas a dar el siguiente paso una vez que se han retirado de practicar el deporte. Hablaremos con Taj sobre las interpretaciones erróneas de la vida del atleta, el poder de preocuparte por los demás y las ventajas de volver a empezar desde cero. No importa a qué te dediques, keep it up. Hi Taj, how are you?
I'm doing great, Sebastian. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me, brother.
No, it's a great pleasure to have you here. So, Tash, before we start, for the people who are unfamiliar with your work, can you tell us a little bit about what you do?
Yes, I do a few different things, Sebastian. So my name is Taj Dashaun. I'm a former college football player at Stony Brook University. I'm an athlete career transition coach. I'm an author. I'm a speaker. I'm vice president of a publishing company. But what I do with my business, ThriveAfterSports, is I help athletes, mostly at the collegiate level, some professional athletes. I help them transition into the next stages of their lives once they're no longer playing their sport. My goal is to take an athlete and help them not only just get a job or start a business, but to find clarity and direction and to wake up every single day with the same excitement that they had when they were playing their sport and transfer that over into whatever chapter they decide to enter into next. I do that through my coaching. I do group coaching. As I mentioned, I have a book. You may see it here in the background, also called Thrive After Sports. I have a podcast called Thrive After Sports as well. And then, like I said, I'm vice president of a publishing company, the same company that helped me publish my book. So it's become one of my new passions to help athletes and just people in general write their stories, publish their books, and use their books to leverage their business. And that's some of the things that I'm up to. I do a few different things, like I said.
Perfect. Can you grab your books just so that people
Absolutely,
can see the cover?
Yeah. Let me grab a fresh copy over here. But this is what it looks like. It's called Thrive After Sports. You can get it on Amazon, but it definitely helps out if you order directly from me from my website, tajdashaun.com. If you order it from me, it's cheaper on there. It's cheaper than Amazon. And also, I will send you a signed copy.
Perfect. Before anything else, let's continue with the book. What is the book about? Is about stories about you with these athletes, or is it more of a guide to make the transition yourself when you're reading it?
Yeah, great question. It's actually a little bit of both, Sebastian. It's I always said that my book it's like my coaching program. The things that I use in my coaching, my curriculum, it's my coaching program inside of a book. Because one thing I didn't want to do is write an autobiography. This is not about me. It's not just about the story of Taj and, where I grew up. It's, I'm not important enough to be able to do that. So what it is when people pick up my book, even if you're not an athlete, because this applies to a lot of people who are in transitions, during the pandemic, people who may be trying to figure out, what am I going to do next? This book is a roadmap. It's more an experience than just something you sit back and read. There are a lot of exercises in there, journal pages. My goal is for someone to pick that book up, work the material, and by the time they put the book down, they have a clear focus and direction of where they're going and how they're going to get there.
And tell us a little bit of the secret origin behind this coaching program and the book. I understand that you were an athlete yourself, and you mentioned it before, but one thing is to have been an athlete, and another thing is to choosing to be the one that helps the transition. So how did you arrive at this decision career-wise?
Yeah, it was kind of a long journey to get here. I think number one, I had so many challenges when I was done playing college football. I didn't know what I was going to do, where to get started. I had been playing football since I was 10 years old. So when I graduated as a 22-year-old man, I found myself in a place where, okay, I need to start making money. I need to figure out what I want to do, but all I know is football. And it took me a lot of time to get to a place where I found my direction. So I actually started out in recruiting. And I love recruiting and helping people find jobs. So that was very rewarding for me. It's very similar to what I do now. As a recruiter, you're essentially a coach, helping people get ready for interviews and things like that. And I wanted to start my own business. And I was like, I think I'm going to start with something that I know, something that I've been through. So I wanted to be the person that I needed in my corner when I was going through that stage. And I started looking at what was available to athletes to help them with this, the challenges that I faced. And there was nothing, especially this was 2017 at the time, about 4 years ago when I started doing this. So I decided to create my curriculum, really start doing research around what the athletes need. And then from there, I put together my program and just started reaching out to universities and reaching out to athletes and just pretty much started from there.
Just as a quick question, does your clients only include athletes from team sports, or is it open to basically any kind of Olympic sport?
Any athlete from any level. I've coached men and women, Olympians. I've coached professional athletes. Like I said, mostly college, because that's kind of my sweet spot. And I only played college ball. I wasn't an Olympian or professional athlete. So the athletes I work with are mostly college athletes from any sport. I can't think of a sport that I haven't coached. And like you said, even individual athletes as well. So, people who run track or what's another, like wrestlers,
Okay.
Fencing. Yeah. I've had a conversation with the fencing guy. I haven't coached a fencer, but I did have a conversation with the guy before. So any sport, any level, even some high school. I've had parents reach out to me so I can coach their high school athletes because they didn't get a college scholarship and they were struggling with that, being 18 and having to go into the real world. So yeah, nothing's off limits. I'll coach any athlete, anyone who needs help.
Perfect. Obviously, there is a bigger industry in the big four sports for you guys in USA. But in general terms, in your experience, is it more difficult for an athlete to make the transition when they are used to practicing a team sport or an individual sport?
I think it depends on the individual. I think that there are people who, just as an example, there was a guy who wrestled, that's pretty much an individual sport. There are people who do individual sports who struggle just as much, if not more, than the people from the team sport. I will say one difference is when you're doing a team sport, one of the things that you struggle with the most is not having your teammates around you. So you go from being a part of this group where you're used to running with your teammates and you do everything together and you're on the same mission to achieve a common goal. And then after you're done playing, you find yourself like, I'm by myself now, and I don't know where to start. So that's the major difference, I would say.
Do you think there's a little bit of a misconception about, I know in USA, maybe I'm thinking more of Mexican terms, because basically in Mexico, all the money goes to soccer because, well, it's the main sport here. And the usual phrase is, all the money and all the attention goes to soccer, and we don't give enough attention to any other sports. But I believe that there's a bit of a misconception about the athlete and about exactly what it takes there, because I listen a lot to the comments that basically imply that there's not really a lot of merit or it's not given enough merit to being a professional athlete. Well, I believe, on the other hand, that since it's a really competitive career path, that you have a limited timeline to make it, that you require a lot of sacrifices, that maybe I believe that many people don't give the athlete the credit due that it takes to be an athlete.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. I think that unless you have competed in that arena, it's difficult to understand exactly what it's like. And I think what you said is spot on 100%. I think people don't understand the sacrifices that go in behind it. Some people, even in my line of work, at the very beginning when I was doing this work, people would say, what's the big deal? You can't play with your ball anymore. You can't play your sport, not understanding that most of these athletes who made it to the college or professional level, they've been playing since they were children, and they've sacrificed. You use that word, sacrifice. You have this limited window where you're competing to be the best at what you do. So it doesn't leave room to explore other things. You know, I wouldn't have, for example, I wouldn't have made it as a college football player if while I was growing up, I was focused on, you know, video games or chasing girls or playing, you know what I mean? It's, you have to be 100% focused if you're going to compete at that level so that you can make yourself better. So yeah, I think, like you said, a lot of people just think athletes show up and play, and they get paid or they get a scholarship just to play a game, not understanding that it's work 24/7 around the clock to be able to get out there and compete when the spotlight is on you, but no one sees the work that's done in the dark.
Yeah, and that they have to take care of their nutrition and their sleep periods and etc., etc., etc. Because, well, if I don't know, if one day I'm looking for a bag of Cheetos, I can eat it and nothing will happen. But I'm imagining a professional athlete shouldn't probably do that. And partying, I don't know, many sacrifices. And you just mentioned that there's a close window to make it or not make it. But even if you make it, you retire. It's funny because you retire basically being very young, but you are too old for your professional. And I don't know, for most professions, you can do it until you are 60, 70, 80 years if you desire. But you can be I don't know, a professional football player at 70 years old. And well, if you can, it probably says more about the sport than, than yourself.
Yeah, that's an interesting point you bring up too, because I think, like you said, athletics is the only sport where you retire as a young person. And see, that's where the challenge comes in. And that's why I do the work that I do, because you're basically at, you know, 22, 23, 24, 25, where however old you are when you retire, in your 20s, most likely at your 30s in the latest. But at such a young age, you're retiring and having to start a brand new life. Like you said, something that most people don't go through until they retire from working at 60 or 70. You're going through that as a young adult, and you have 60 or 70 years of life ahead of you that you have to figure out, what am I going to do with this? So I think that's why conversations like these are so important. And I think that's why I felt the need to, you know, give my contribution to helping athletes figure out that next chapter of their lives.
Obviously, making so much exercise is it's good for health, but it actually takes a toll on the bones and things for the athletes that are retiring. But at the same time, how since you help them with the transitions, have you noticed that there are some changes in the way athletes think, or I don't know, that they got too used to being famous and now it's not like they stopped being famous, but they aren't as famous anymore. Usually the spotlight is on someone else, or that they used to have less privacy, and that hurts them. I don't know if I'm explaining myself right, but basically, what's the mental sequels to being an athlete, in your opinion?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there's an adjustment period after you're done, because you are used to being in the spotlight or having a certain amount of notoriety. And that's where the challenge really comes in. It takes an adjustment, because you go from being at the top of your field as a professional athlete or a college athlete, and then you find yourself down here, back having to start at the bottom no matter what you do. And I often have to explain to athletes that, okay, yes, you were the best player at your high school, you were the best player at your college, you know, you may have even been the best player on your professional team. And now here you are, wherever you go next, you're starting over again. You're basically a freshman. You are a rookie in life. And I think athletes have to get comfortable with that and understand that you're not going to go from, you know, being the captain of your college soccer team to being a CEO at a company. It doesn't work like that. You're going to have to start at the bottom like everyone else. You're not going to go from being, you know, the captain of your baseball team to graduating from college and now you're a multimillionaire entrepreneur. You're going to have to start from the bottom and build that business up just like everyone else. So I think that if as athletes, if we can adopt that mindset and be like, okay, this is going to take me 2, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years of hard work to work my way back up to the top again, then it makes the process easier instead of going into it with the sense of entitlement or having a false expectation of what it really looks like.
What do you think that happens more? That the athletes are thinking about a career after being professional athletes that's still connected to the sport, or more like, okay, I'm done. I've had enough about this sport for many years. And what are the barriers in both cases? In one to, like you said, start from a rookie in the same sport that you used to work with in another capacity, or like being a complete clean state in everything.
Man, Sebastian, I just want to say, man, you're asking some great questions.
Thanks.
You know, I know it's funny because English is your second language and you're asking better questions than most people who interview me, and they're from the States. So
Thanks.
yeah, these are great questions, brother. I think that I see a lot of athletes who want to stay around the sport. Like you said, they want to coach, or they want to work in athletics. They want to work in an athletic department. They want to be a broadcaster or something. They just want to stay around the sport. And so I think that we have to be very careful with that, because when I'm talking to someone, if they just finished playing football and they say, hey, I want to be a football coach, I'm not just going to say, okay, I'm going to help you be a football coach. No, we need to take a step back and we need to look at that. So why do you want to be a football coach? Is it because you're afraid to see what else you may be able to do? Are you afraid to start with a clean slate, like you were saying? And I think some people, you know, it's beneficial for them to stay around their sport, and other people, it's more beneficial for them to explore other things outside of their sport and figure out what else they can be good at aside from just staying close to it. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Okay. And it actually leads me to the next one that I just came up with. Why do you think that many great athletes just don't make it as a coach from that same sport? Because I know there's a change of mindset. And before you answer, I know soccer isn't really big in USA, but you know Cristiano Ronaldo, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Perfect. A couple of years ago, when he was still in Real Madrid, I remember an interview of him because they were asking him, hey, when you retire, do you want to be a coach? And he was like, coaching 11 guys like me? No, thanks. So, and he mentioned it from the beginning that, and he's doing it right now, that he will be making, that when he leaves football, he will completely leave it and start making business things, and also like he also wants to be an actor and things like that. So just reminding the thing of Cristiano Ronaldo was like, okay, is it really as simple as that? Like, I just don't want to coach people like me, or I get frustrated because I'm a great in my sport and probably the players that I have aren't just as great as I am.
Yeah. I think it could be a mixture of both. I think some people don't make it in coaching because they're not supposed to be coaches, or it's just a matter of preference too, right? Like, I'm someone who over the years, as I've matured, I enjoy coaching people and developing others, and, you know, guiding people and helping them. So, you know, when I first graduated, I could have gone back and been a football coach at my high school or coached at my college, but I didn't feel called to do that. So although I may have been good at it, I enjoy doing more what I do now, which is coaching athletes through their transition. So I think it kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier, where it's not, like you said, just like the example of Cristiano Ronaldo, it's not necessarily that athletes don't want to coach or wouldn't be good at coaching. It's just that you have to choose what's best for you. And the main thing is, you don't just want to be a coach because it's comfortable. That's a bad reason to be a coach. That's a bad reason to do anything. Or I just don't know anything else, or this is comfortable for me. I don't want to get out of my comfort zone. So I'm just going to do this.
So Tash, what do you think is that, outside of what you mentioned, that you can't take, or you shouldn't take decisions based on want to remain in my comfort zone, what do you think is that X factor that makes someone like, okay, I'm a great, I have that coach mentality. Maybe it's the tactician part, maybe it's the motivational part, maybe it's a little bit of both. Uh, but what is that X factor that, in your opinion, helps that transition to, okay, I'm not just doing it to remain connected to the sport, but I'm actually a good uh, option for it?
You're saying if someone wants to be a coach?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, and this applies to not just coaching through a sport, but also coaching in life. So I think that what you have to understand if you want to be a great coach, you have to ask yourself, why are you doing it, right? I think what makes a great coach is having a genuine interest in the people. Because I've had coaches who coached me over the years, and I could tell that they actually cared about my well-being, like me as a human being, as well as how I performed on the field. And I've had coaches that I could tell they were just there because it was a job, and they were there because they're just trying to grow in their careers. They don't really care about the players. Nobody remembers those coaches. The coaches you remember are the coaches who actually cared about you as a human and helped you elevate your game. So I think that's what makes a great coach. You have to understand people. You have to be great with people, and you have to be able to manage different personalities. This is whether you're a coach or a manager or a CEO. You have to understand what makes people tick and what's in it for them. Not just what's in it for you, but what's in it for them as an individual. And you have to tap into that and be able to develop that. So does that answer your question? I'm not sure if,
yeah.
Okay, good. Okay.
Also, sorry about the about this many soccer reference, but I'll be honest, that's my sport as a guy. So I'm really most of the examples come from that. But also, there's a player, a Spanish former player called Xabi Alonso, and I remember just a couple of months ago that he was like, when he was asked why he chose to be a football manager, he was like, well, you know what? I've been coached by Mourinho, Guardiola, Ancelotti, Benitez. Basically, I was coached by the best of the best. So, so I don't know if some of it rubbed on me, but just watching them, I was like, I want to do that. So
Right.
that leads to my next question: is that you think the people you are connected with, because in the end, the team manager is basically the leader on the field, even if he or she doesn't play him or herself. But do you think that having a great example of a coach actually helps not only to have a good example of doing it, but putting that little seed that grows into wanting to be a leader? Is it as simple as having the right person next to you?
Yeah, 100%. I think because now that makes me think of like mentorship and having role models and people that you can look to, and that's something that I'm really big on. That's something that's made a difference in my life, is modeling people or always having people to look up to and say, I like this about that person. I like that about that person. I want to be just like this person in certain ways. So I think, and it's perfect because I know your show is about entrepreneurship and we're here talking about sports, but the two exist. There's a lot of parallels. So when you talk about great coaches, I think about CEOs or bosses or team leaders, because it's all the same thing. They're coaches. So I think having that, I can see what you're saying, where it's like, if your example is good, it makes you want to be like that person. Like if you have a bunch of great coaches, you're going to be a great coach because you're able to learn things. I would even say, even if you have a bad coach or a bad example, you can learn, okay, I don't want to do that. I don't want to be like that person because that's a bad coach. So you can learn through that method as well. But I mean, mentorship is huge. Having people that you can look to and learn from, that's necessary. And I encourage not only entrepreneurs, but athletes as well. If you're feeling like you need someone to pull you up, you have to go find those people. Those people aren't going to knock on your door and say, hey, do you need help with your business? Do you need help with your life? You have to find those people and ask them for support and guidance, and hopefully bring them value too. So it's a two-way street instead of just, they're helping you and you're not doing anything for them.
You just mentioned that, how do I say this, the parallels between entrepreneurship and sportsmanship. And I would like to follow up a little bit on that. What do you think are the the key facts that share both the entrepreneur and the athlete that many people probably just don't make the connection?
Man, it's funny. That's a great question. And something that's been on my mind a lot lately is obsession. You have to be obsessed with what you're doing, or I don't want to say you're not going to make it, but it's not going to be all that it could be. So the same way, and this is why I love working with athletes, especially athletes who want to be business owners or be entrepreneurs or build teams, because there's so many parallels. Just like we were talking about earlier, all the work that goes in as an athlete, the training, the watching film, the practice, working out when you don't feel like it, watching your diet. Like you said, you can't just eat Cheetos if you're trying to win a championship. You have to be mindful of you have to be mindful of everything, not just what you're eating, but what you're listening to, what you're watching. Everything matters. And the same thing applies in business. If you're not constantly getting better, you're not going to be as good in business as you can possibly be. If you're not upping your skills, improving your skill set, studying yourself, constantly looking for ways to grow your mindset, ways to improve, ways to add new skills to your arsenal. If you're not doing that, then, you're just going to be mediocre. You're not going to be one of the greats. And it's not about being, the great in the public eye, but being great to you, being great to your team and to the people in your life. That's all that really matters. So I think athletes make great entrepreneurs. I think people who never even played sports, if you're in business, if you adopt the mindset of an athlete, if you apply an athletic mindset to business and entrepreneurship, nothing but great things can happen.
And one last question about sportsmanship. I know there's a lot of competition, but there's also in any sports a lot of ego involved, because especially in team sports, you have as many dozens of players, which each has their own ego. They each have their own aspirations. They each want to be the GOAT, as you Americans say. So, right. As a leader, be it a coach or an entrepreneur or a business person, just like I mentioned before, what are your tips to deal with other people's ego, to make them because it sounds basic, like, okay, don't worry about your individual aspirations, worry about the team ones. But how do you make dozens of people believe that same speech?
I think that there's a such thing as having a healthy ego. I think that there's good ego and there's bad ego. I don't think, some people will say you shouldn't have ego at all. I don't think that's necessarily true, unless you want to be a monk, unless you want to live in the mountains or something, and there's nothing wrong with that. But to live in the real world, you have to have some kind of ego, because that's who makes you who you are. Like, you and I are having a great conversation because our positive egos are out. There's no, there's good energy between us because your good ego is out, my good ego is out, and our egos are interacting. If we didn't have egos, we'd just be sitting here staring at each other. So that's what makes me who I am and what makes you who you are. I think that as a leader, when dealing with different personalities and different egos, I think that you always have to try to find win-wins. So, let's say if you're a business owner and you're managing a team, you have to find, obviously it's your company or your business or your mission or your team that you're leading. So that's your ego. Your ego wants these people that are part of your team to help you with your mission. But you also have to remember that these people have egos too. And that's where the win-wins comes in. You have to say, okay, I have my own ego. I have my own goals. I want these people to help me. But the best way they can help me is if they're not just helping me with my mission, but by helping me, they're helping themselves. So it's a tight rope to walk, but it can be done where you're helping you're feeding into other people's egos, helping them get what they want while you're getting what you want, and everybody's happy.
And basing on what you just mentioned, did you watch the Last Dance Netflix documentary series?
I did. I didn't finish it. I still need to finish it, but I'm about halfway through. But I loved every moment of it.
Yeah, it's a really good series. I'm not usually a basketball person, but still, I watch it all. But yeah, I remember one one phrase. I don't know if I'm spoiling this because I don't know the episode, but well, you know what happened. Michael Jordan and the Red Bulls. Well, and I remember a phrase from the docu-series where Jackson tells the audience that he basically had to sit with Michael Jordan, the Michael Jordan, and tell him, you know what, you're the top scorer in the league, and you're great, but you are not winning championships. And
Right.
no one remembers the great player who didn't win championships. And
Right.
basically, and I mentioned this because I think it comes with what you were mentioning just before, that okay, you know what, it's not just Michael Jordan pass the ball, but also, you know what, if you make your teammates better, uh, you decrease a little bit of your individual scores, we actually make a better team and we can win championships, and then you'll be considered, and basically by a lot of people still consider, the GOAT of basketball. So
Right. Yeah. I remember that part. That
I,
was a very pivotal moment where it became less about him being the superstar, and Phil Jackson told Michael Jordan that you have to develop as an individual, and you have to develop as a leader and put more of the focus on passing the ball around and using the people around you to help you and developing them. So that goes back to what we were saying earlier. It's not just Michael Jordan's, of course, it's still Michael Jordan's team and he goes down in history, but that wouldn't have happened if he didn't start including and developing everyone around him as well.
exactly. There's also a quick metaphor. I don't know if you've watched a series. It's called The English Game. It's also on Netflix.
I haven't, but I will definitely check it out.
Yeah, I recommend it. It's basically the story behind the first professional soccer player in England. It's
Mm.
more, and well, it's a drama series, and obviously it has drama. But I remember a particular scene where, just at the beginning, there's no spoiler here, but basically there is the team, and the team is losing like 5-0, and then that player who came from Ireland and he was in England was like, "So you guys like to take the ball the whole way yourselves?" Yeah. It was like, "No, no, no. Give me the ball." And it was like, and then he just threw it and was like, "Dude, make the cliff move the ball for you. You don't need to take it yourself the whole time." Because, and you see
Right.
it as the team, it was like everyone wanted to have the ball the whole time, and they didn't work as a team. And then the first professional player was like, "Okay, you know what? Give me the ball, and I'll just throw it to you, and the ball will do the running for you, and then you'll score." And I think that's a good metaphor for what we're saying. That maybe, and I think this particularly works for entrepreneurs. We're so used to being good at what we do that it's really uh, difficult for us to accept that maybe someone else can do it just as good as us, or maybe not as good as us, but do it a good enough job that you can use that same talent on other things, right? That maybe are more
Right.
required for the company's success.
Yeah. I think that's a great metaphor. Yeah. Whether it's Michael Jordan or the metaphor you just gave from the English game, you have to it has to be a team effort. No one accomplishes anything great all by themselves. You know, like even Michael Jordan, although everybody remembers Michael Jordan as the GOAT, he still always gives credit to Phil Jackson. He still gives credit to Scottie Pippen. You know, he says I think he even said in the Last Dance there would be no championship without Scottie Pippen, you know, and the rest of the supporting cast. So that's a great metaphor you just gave.
Thank you. So, Tash, to start wrapping this up, in the Keep It Up show, our last question is always three do's and three don'ts for entrepreneurs. So, basically, three things they should do and three things they shouldn't do. So, what will be your three do's and three don'ts?
Love that question. Three do's. Definitely get 100% clear on why you want to do what it is that you want to do. You have to know why you're embarking on this mission in the first place, because that's the thing. Your why will keep you going when, you feel like quitting or you're not making money or it gets too hard. Knowing why you're doing what you're doing is the first thing. So that's the first do. Do get mentorship, do get help. Like we've been talking about this whole time, you can't do anything on your own. You have to find people who can help you and people who can run with you. So that's key. The last one I would say is stay consistent and be patient too, because I think we live in an instant gratification culture. And sometimes people, if it doesn't happen in 6 months, if it doesn't happen in a year, they just give it up and they say, it's not for me. I'll just go do something else. So you have to stay consistent. You have to understand that it's going to take time. And if you don't do the work, no one else is going to do it for you. So you can't expect great things to happen if you're not doing the work, if you're not doing it consistently, and if you haven't been doing the work for a long period of time. Three don'ts. Okay. Don't do it just for money. Don't become an entrepreneur only for money, because that, especially if you're just starting out, that's not going to sustain you. Don't think you know it all. Don't think you're too good to continue learning and always be learning. Don't think you're too big to have anyone give you advice or help you out. And then lastly, what's another don't? Okay. Don't try to tear other people down. Just focus on building yourself up. I think sometimes entrepreneurs get into business and they're trying to compete with other people or, ruin other people's reputation instead of just focusing on what they're doing. So don't get distracted by other people. Focus on yourself. That's what I would say lastly.
Tash, if someone wanted to, get your book and learn a little bit more about your coaching, maybe hiring you, or simply just learn a little bit more about what you do, how can they find you on social media?
Yes, the best place to go is just TajDashaun.com, because my website has all my social media handles. But I'm Taj Dashaun on LinkedIn. I'm Taj Dashaun on Instagram. As you know, I think we connected on Clubhouse. Yeah. So make sure you connect with me on Clubhouse. I'm Taj Dashaun on there as well. The book, Thrive After Sports, you can get that on Amazon. Just type in Thrive After Sports or go directly to my website and click book. And that's where I can send you a personal signed copy if you order from there. Lastly, my podcast, Thrive After Sports, same name as the book, is available on all podcast platforms. So yeah, make sure you check that out as well.
Perfect. So Tash, I want to thank you a lot for your time. And well, I hope you had such a great time as we did. And as we say on this program, keep it up.
Thank you, Sebastian. It's been a pleasure, brother. I appreciate your time as well. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Si te gustó el episodio de hoy, recuerda que puedes escucharnos en Spotify y YouTube, y para más herramientas de estos temas, estamos en Instagram y Facebook como @entrepreneur. Si quieres seguir a nuestro invitado de hoy, te dejamos en la caja de descripción sus redes sociales y datos de contacto. Gracias por escucharnos y nos vemos en el próximo episodio. Recuerda, keep it up.